Welcome to NBA Mental Boost. This is your coach, Dr. Rosie, and today we're mixing things up a bit. So I am joined by my very first guest, and oh my God, have I chosen the best guest to kick this off with. I'm going to be speaking with Gary Maitland, who, if you don't know, is a professional skills coach. He's worked with NBA players like Jimmy Butler and Jordan Poole. He's worked with Pure Sweat Basketball and Impact Basketball. He is a phenomenal skills coach and a wonderful person. So I hope that you enjoy listening to this just as much as I enjoyed making it with the one and only Gary Maitland. So hi Gary, how are you?
Good, thank you. And how are you?
I'm good. I'm enjoying the sunshine. Like we were saying just before the call, is that sunshine, but then also we get the hay fever season. So it's
I know we don't get the full luxury of the summer when hay fever kicks in.
no, I'm feeling you on that one. So if we like cough, sneeze, or splutter in this,
Yeah,
people will know why.
apologize now. Yeah.
So how's your summer going? It looks like you've been busy with travels.
Yeah, summer started off really well. I mean, who knows when summer actually starts? But for me, I guess the summer is defined by when formal domestic seasons have finished, I
Yeah.
guess. Like that's really when my kind of like summer mind starts to tick. So yeah, like the later stages of May, beginning of June for me is summer, and it started off really well. Just got back from Grenada, did a 3-day camp with the Colon Baptiste Foundation, where we worked with the top 20 players on the island, which was a phenomenal week.
Wow, that must have been incredible. And then for
It
you,
really was.
what kind of other bits have you got coming up over the summer then?
So our off-season schedule has started at the beginning of June, and that runs right the way through until the later stages of August, because by then a lot of players would have flown to their teams or to their universities. So we're fully locked in throughout those months. So that's kind of like where, yeah, a lot of kind of attention is, because that's when the players are back and they want to level up for the next year.
Yeah.
Uh, and we've also got camps and clinics happening throughout the summer as well. So it gets super busy.
Yeah, kind of ramps up. So I'd love to know because obviously I don't work on the skills side. So my knowledge of the kind of skills training is really minimal. What's the difference between kind of the in-season work that you do and then the off-season? Obviously, like you say, it ramps up in the off-season, but kind of, yeah, what's the like describe it to a layman? What's the kind of difference?
Yeah. So I suppose let's start the off season, because that kind of is a good starting point, right? So like this
Mhm.
season's just finished. There's a little bit of rest where players obviously need to take time away, physically, but also mentally from the game. And then it's about right locking in and making sure that they're sharp, their skills are sharp, their fitness is up to speed. By the time they hit training camp or at whatever point they sign with the team. So it's about, well, what are some of the gaps in their skill set, or what are some of the strengths that they need to turn into superpowers? Those are kind of the key focuses for the off season. Um, and the importance there is just being ready. And a lot of decisions are made in the off season about players, and if it can be like the storyline, the narrative around what they're doing in the summer and how they're performing in sessions, or their character, like it's good for their personal brand to kind of be shown or seen, or spoken of, that they're really locked in and they really want to add value to wherever they go next year. So
Yeah.
so the we can work at a sort of a slower pace, in the sense that we've got like a 3-month window to
Mhm.
improve on a lot of things. And um the day, even though day to day is like super fast, super intense, high speed, we really make sure that we're efficient on the court and we're not really taking any time off, so to speak.
Mm.
But actually in the macro we've got 3 months, so it's not an overnight process. So that luxury of conversation, of dialogue, of trying things out, testing things, is we have that luxury of time, if certainly if the player's with me for that amount of time during the summer. And that differs during the season, because during the season you've got the added weight of um, team practice, right? So they're with their teams, which is usually 5-6 days a week, games, travel. There's a lot going on, right? There's a lot going on. So it kind of shifts into, well, more mentorship in the sense that depending on where they are in the world, it becomes more about dialogue. It could be film review. How is a player playing? Conversations that need to be added. If it's in person, then it's short, sharp. How can we get in some extra reps with moments that players are struggling with during the season, and really super focused. But it's not that same kind of intense period of just locking in on that, because as I said, there's so many other things happening at the same time.
Yeah, and I love how you were saying it's like the superpowers. I was just thinking like, okay, the off season is like the time to dial up those superpowers and be like, okay, where are your strengths? You know, as well as where are the weaknesses and areas you want to work on.
Well,
But be
definitely, yeah,
mm,
because the I mean, obviously weaknesses are important to address, right? You don't want to be a liability in any way. But the reality is that you're being signed because you're good at something, right? You're playing for a team because you're good at something. And if you can be great at something, if you can be outstanding at something, then that really like increases your value, you know? So
mm,
being a jack of all trades, I don't know, it's tough to sign sometimes. Sometimes the versatility is important. Like, you know, defensively, it's important that you can guard multiple positions. That is super, like, you know, that's a high value item to have on your team. Uh,
mm,
but at the same time, you've got to be very, very, very good at something that a
yeah.
team can say, right, we need you for that.
Mm.
And that's where turning strengths into superpowers is actually such an important thing to kind of get your head around. You know, just having a strength isn't good enough. Like, you need to like improve on those and make those stand out from the rest.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. And that really kind of resonates with the work that I do with players. The difference that I find with the skills and the mental side, like you were saying, with the kind of, you know, everyone's got a personal brand and they're obviously like showing, you know, what they're doing over the summer. A lot of people will talk about, you know, the work they're doing with skilled trainers and they'll show snippets of films and things. Not many people talk about the work that they're doing with the mental coaches. So I found that with sort of clients that I work with.
So
So we're doing a lot of work, but it's not talked about as much.
yeah, I mean, let's dig a little bit deeper into that, because I'm interested in that. So if if you're right, it's not showcased as much. What what's the barrier to that?
I think although it's obviously shifting, there is still this kind of a bit of a stigma about, you know, the sort of working on your mental side, almost like, well, I've got a problem and I'm working on it, rather than, like you said, well, you might already have some things that you're great at and we're just going to dial it up. You know, that stuff's already within you, but maybe we're just dialing up certain areas. So how you described it, I'm like, oh, that's how I look at the mental performance. But I think on the outside, there's still that kind of, yeah, a bit of disparity around what it actually is, because in my mind it is like going to the gym and you're getting the reps in, but you're doing it for your mind, and the more
Right.
that you work on it, the more you strengthen it, and then when you're in the season you've already got these tools. So I like to think of it as like a toolbox, like
Yeah,
you've got these tools that you've got in your back pocket you can draw upon.
yeah.
But yeah, I think it's the kind of awareness and education piece around like how people perceive this kind of work.
Interesting, yeah. Because as I reflect on various pieces of content, you know, that I can think of, um, you're right. Obviously, I can, you know, visualize those skill training moments, you know, the in the gym moments, you know, I can visualize all of those. And actually, there is a lot of content around other people's mental preparation. You know, I can think of
Yeah,
kind of those motivational videos of Kobe talking, you know,
yeah.
with you know, the orchestral background kind of making it sound more dramatic and stuff. They
Mm-hmm.
exist, but I guess they exist in our, or they're taken from what our you know, our favorite athletes are doing.
Mm.
Whereas actually athletes could probably turn the camera around and start talking about what they do more. That would be really
Yeah,
cool. That would be really
yeah. I would love that if people, and like, you know, I tried to do it myself as well. I have a coach who, funnily enough, is a basketball player. He coaches me on my mindset. And
okay.
I tried to share, you know, where we have like these like doubts might come in or limiting beliefs. And I'll be like, okay, this thing came in. This is what I'm doing to sort of unpick it. And I'd love if people showed, so that you don't just see the great players talking about, you know, work on the mental game. Like this is, you know, 80% of the game is mental or whatever the number is now, you don't necessarily see the journey. So like, okay, well, but what did you do and what kind of tools were you using? How did you find it? There were days where, you know, you struggled to get it done or whatever, because no one starts off like incredible.
Mm.
But we often don't see the steps. You see the great players, and you know, in other sports as well, there's loads of motivational athlete kind of commentary, but you don't see the kind of behind the scenes of they're like, okay, you know, I started out and I wanted to meditate every single day, but you know what, I lost my way, and then I just ghosted myself, because that's quite a really common thing. Things get hard and then we ghost ourselves. And you
Yeah.
don't hear that bit. And I think people are just, you know, understandably, people kind of, there's a massive vulnerability for sort of sharing that. But I think if we could see like behind the scenes of all the great players that are talking about, yeah, how they're on top of their mental game, and if we can see the kind of the journey that it took to get there, and also to show sorry, we did say there might be coughing on this, to also show that like it's not you don't get to the top of the mountain and then you're done. Just like with your physical skills, you know, you're constantly growing and learning and evolving.
Yeah, and actually, you mentioned something. You kind of did it in a real. You did it really quickly, but actually, I want to address it. And you said whatever it is today. So we always hear about these percentages, like it's 80% mental and all this kind of stuff. I'm calling BS on all of these numbers, but I
Yeah.
but I actually I'd like to dial in on that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's 100% mental. Like 100, like you can't escape it. You know,
Yeah.
you can't escape the fact that performance is 100% mental. Like there is a decision to be made, there is choices, there is thought, there is commitment.
Yeah.
Like it really is 100% mental. And I think it would be awesome to have more people talking about what they're doing to
Yeah.
focus on that, because it is such an important part of the game. I mean, the
Yeah.
effort was made with 80%. The effort was made to say that the majority of performance is mental, but I think the reality is it is 100.
Yeah. And it affects every single thing that you do and the decisions that you make, the commitment. You know, you might not be motivated, but if you're committed, but that comes down to your mindset, how you perceive things, how you react to things, your focus. Like, yeah. But I mean, obviously, you were talking to the converted, but kind of for more of us to talk about this stuff,
Mm.
and also to show that we don't need to have like mental health issues, because I think sometimes there's a bit of a, people get a bit confused around that of, but I don't have a mental health issue, or you know, don't have anxiety, depression, or, and definitely of course there's a lot of support in that space, but I think sometimes it's almost got a bit blurred that mental health and working on your mental performance are sometimes seen as kind of one and the same. And it's like, well, almost like talking about your physical skills, like, well, I don't have an injury, so I don't need to be working on my physical skills. Like, no one would ever say that. I
Yeah,
don't need to go to the gym because I'm not doing rehab. No one would ever say that. But with the
yeah,
mental side, sometimes people are like, oh yeah, I don't need to work on my mental game because I don't have a problem. It's like,
mm,
you don't need to have a problem. Like you're saying about dialing up your kind of superpowers.
mm.
It's, yeah. But the more that if we can kind of have these conversations and be like, okay, these are, you know, the kind of tools that these athletes are using, the sort of way that they're reframing their thoughts, because it's so important.
Yeah, and I guess there's also like some subliminal persuasion to things, right? Like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, if you see your whoever you think the greatest athlete is, if you see them in the gym lifting weights, then you'll lift weights. If
Yeah.
you see them working on their skill set, they're gonna work on their skill set. Like, that's
Mm.
just grassroots are gonna just kind of follow that trend, because if that's what the best are doing, then we should be doing that. And I
Yeah.
think you're right. I think having that shift in conversation, and being more open about the importance of mental training, mental rehearsal, like that mental performance, then
Mm.
yeah, I think we would see a shift. We would see a shift. But also actually thinking about it, well, if you go on social media or you have conversations and you know that there's basketball coaching, there's skills coaching, there's personal trainers, all of a sudden you feel like, oh yeah, I need one of those. So
Mm.
it would also be good to have more, mental performance coaches like come out from the woodwork, so
Yeah.
that all of a sudden there's options for people to tap into and people to connect with.
Yeah. Yeah, like
Because
we're our own personal brands as well. Like the same as kind of the athletes that we're supporting. And being like, everyone has the same with skills trainers. Like we all have slightly different methods, slightly different approaches, and being able to show, this is kind of what it looks like to work with a mental performance coach, and this is what you can expect. Because again, I think there's a view around, well, I don't need a therapist, and it's like, okay, but it's not therapy. And so if you could, again, if they can see behind the scenes of like, okay, these are the kind of ways you can work, just like you would with, seeing film of someone working with a skills trainer during the summer. Like, okay, these are some of the tools that we might be using, or, these are some of the plans that my clients are using over the summer. I'm working on like meditation, really embedding the habits, and being like, the off season's a great time to do it, because so many people, when I talk to them about, would you like to start working on this over the off season, they're like, oh no, I'll wait until I start with my new team, and then if there's a problem, I'll reach out. And it's like, oh, but how about if you could already work on it during the off season, so that if a challenge comes along, you're like, okay, I've got it. Like I've got the resources, I've got some things I can dial into. Again, just like you don't wait for an injury. I'm always using that, but it's the same, but the perception's different.
well, yeah, and another analogy that I can think of is the saying that you don't fix the hole in your roof when it's raining.
Yeah, yeah,
Same thing.
yeah. It is so true. And so I would love to see more people. And the thing is, I think, there are a lot of people who are having mental performance support, but we're just kind of not hearing about it. We're seeing the motivational quotes and everything, which are, they're fab, but it just doesn't show us that kind of underlying what the work looks like. Because I think, talking with a lot of youth players, I've had conversations lately where people are like, oh, my coach just tells me that, again, 80% of the game is mental, or I just need to get out of my head. And all these things kind of get like, they're out there and you see motivational quotes, but people are like, yeah, but how? Like,
Mm.
what can I do? And, the tools depend on the individual, what they want to work on. But it's like being able to show that.
That's actually a big problem, broadly speaking, is that we communicate so well in cliches.
Yeah.
Like we need to try harder, or we need to work at 100%. We need to, like, there's all this kind of stuff that just gets thrown out. And actually it means nothing. It's such a waste of communication space,
Yeah.
because no one actually knows what that means. Like,
No.
you're in a huddle and you're like, right, guys, we need to work at 100%. All right, Johnny, what does 100% look like for you? What are
Yeah.
we actually going to see? Or actually, what are we going to see if you're working at 80%? Because you know what? We need to know. Because if we see you working at 80%, we're going to hold you accountable. So
Yeah.
until you actually know what it like looks like, smells like, tastes like, feels like, I mean,
Yeah.
all of these cliches mean nothing.
Yeah, they just get thrown around. And then people that I'm talking to, because we don't have these conversations, they think there's something wrong with them, because they're like, oh, well, I think someone yesterday was saying, so he's 16, and he said, oh, my coach said that I look lost on the court. And he's like, so I just need to stop feeling lost. And I'm like, so how do you do that?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like, okay, you need to dive. So they're kind of, you just need to get out of your head. Like, oh, okay. Like,
yeah.
how? And so people think there's something wrong with them, because they just assume that, oh, well, everyone else must be doing this. Everyone else is sharing all these motivational stuff, the cliches, and without saying the how, it's really easy to think you're the only one that actually has no clue and might not want to ask. Like, but how do I even get there? How do I do it?
Mm,
So it's really important to have those conversations.
powerful stuff.
It is a big one. We could have like a whole episode just on that, but there's loads of stuff that I want to ask you about. So I'd like to know a bit more about your journey, because I don't think I actually really know kind of your journey into what you're doing.
Um, so the journey, I guess, started the moment. Well, actually, no, the journey started when I had fantastic coaches growing up.
Mm,
Like I was blessed to be around some incredible basketball minds, incredible people that cared about the player, not just the
mm,
layup or the shot. And Tony Garbaletto, Joe White were my first two coaches domestically.
mm,
Um, I also made it to the national team growing up. So I had Rick Woolridge and Chris Morgan, Humph Long, who were, you know, just fantastic coaches. Really got to learn a lot about the game from a very young age, from my teenage years. Went to the US as most kind of top domestic players kind of do. We look to go west, more going east now, but we do kind of traditionally look to go west to kind of access that higher level. And you know, the US, obviously basketball is a traditional game. Doesn't necessarily mean that every single coach and every single player is great. But I tell you what, I was fortunate enough to be around great coaches and players. So my, experience in the game, gave me access to some awesome coaches, Jay Ladner and Coach Errol Golf, and they were phenomenal with helping me develop as a player. But years later, I realized that, wow, they really did a good job with helping me with my coaching knowledge, because I was just able to retain a lot of the stuff that I learned and share it and pass it on. So when I got back to the UK, I was still in kind of player mode. I wanted to play, but then I'm very what's the word without making it sound toxic? I I I'm very obsessive with things that I feel like I can do that. I can achieve that. Obsessive is probably the wrong word because that doesn't sound very healthy, but definitely determined to master it.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden triggers. And I got that when I saw a coaching session. And
Mm.
I looked at it and the ego kicked in and was like, I can do that. In fact, I can do a better job than that. In fact, hold on a minute. I've learned so much from these great coaches. I want to start sharing that with players uh,
Mm.
at the grassroots level. So I kind of, dipped my toe into coaching and did some like schools programs and some National League clubs. And just got deeper and deeper and deeper into the practice, into that environment, and realized that, well, if I'm going to make a difference with players, it can't be done on once or twice a week. It really needs to be daily, and that was my experience in the US, where schools programs are so popular because you do get to make a lot of progress over there, or at least the opportunity to make progress is there over the year. So I realized that I needed to get into a school. So one of the schools that I was kind of doing those casual freelance coaching was Harrow High School. It's actually where I attended as well. So there were a lot of kind of doors open to me because of the connection I had as a student, and it kind of just fell into place. And I started working with players daily. I had a role at the school. I started off as a learning mentor, then became a behavior and attendance officer. So I was learning actually a lot about the school operationally and how it's run and kind of behaviors, and learned a lot about behavior management and building a rapport with students. And that just strengthened the experience that I had with players on the court. So
Yeah.
now I'm in that environment. We developed an academy at Harrow High for 11 to 16-year-olds. And then we would kind of like get to a point where, yes, we would focus on competing in the season. But the whole point really for me was like, what are the exit routes? I don't want this to be the end where players are then stuck and don't know what to do. So it was like, well, let's try and get you to a point at which we can move you on to have the next level of experience, whatever that may be.
Mm.
But learned very quickly that, okay, I'm in team coaching. I'm, helping a team progress through the year. But I learned very quickly that, I'm getting my tactical board out and I'm researching the best strategic plays that could, completely outwit our opponents. It came down to the skills.
Yeah.
It came down to literally executing what we've drawn up on the tactical board. And
Mm.
I realized that those two things obviously need to coexist and are super important. But it was those individual skills that really kind of hit home to me, that I was like, we really need to lock in on these. And it was around the
Mm.
time that YouTube and well, really YouTube was the biggest thing for sharing videos
Mm-hmm.
at the time. So I tapped into that. I would do my research on it, and then I started realizing, actually there's stuff that I would like to share. Again, ego kicked in. I was like, I can do that. I can edit a video. I'll learn. I'll chop it up and I'll make my own. So I did. And then in doing that, Facebook, Twitter came on the scene. I mean, Facebook was already there, but you weren't really sharing um, uh, links or videos from other platforms. So Facebook and Twitter became the place where I would then share the content. And before you know it, like conversations are happening. Um, Players who I hadn't known before were able to connect with me and see it because of the access that you can get on social media to other people.
Mm.
And then some professional players reached out. Jamal Anderson was one of them. Um, Ashley Hamilton was another. Will Oharabi was one of them. And they were like, "Oh, we want to do training like that. We don't get to do things like that." And then
Mm.
I started to realize that there's a gap in the market for skills training. And this was early days. This is 2011.
Uh,
So 2011 was a very different world, from a
mm.
social media standpoint and from access to other people. Not everybody had Twitter, not everybody had Instagram, wasn't even on the scene at that point.
Yeah.
So I was quite an early adopter with producing content and putting it out onto YouTube and social media,
Mhm.
which meant that I was able to get a lot of early attention to that. Um, and the content started to, do really, really well, which meant it was hitting more people, the engagement was going high. So then
Yeah.
it fell into Instagram, Facebook. You could then just upload a video straight away. Everything just became a lot easier.
Mm.
But the personal brand of Coach Maitland, if you like, started to really kind of take off. Um,
Mhm.
and it became less about where I was coaching or who I was coaching for, and it became more about, well, what am I able to share and add value to these players? And then I realized, okay, my calling is not to stick with one team, but is about to reach out to as many people as possible and help them on their journey, that I'm locked in with them for potentially a career rather than a
Mm.
season. And that and that yeah, that's my calling. That resonates with me. So when I do camps in Grenada, when I do I recently did a 1 day clinic over in Stamford in Lincolnshire.
Mm.
um, those things are so rewarding for me because I'm able to share in person what I've learned over the years, which includes the phenomenal coaching that I had when I was a child, and has then moved on to my high school and college career, where I had Jay Ladner, Errol Golf. My college coach was Billy Kennedy and Steve Prone, who have moved on to phenomenal things in the NCAA world. And then as an NBA trainer, where I've experienced working out with Jordan Poole, Jimmy Butler, been around players like Kyle Lowry at Impact, and their clients. So, being able to draw from my experience working with Drew Hannon of Pure Sweat, with Jason Tatum and Joel Embiid, Kelly Oubre, like the names, they're phenomenal basketball players with phenomenal coaches and skills trainers, that I've just kind of absorbed all this knowledge and I can now regurgitate that and share that with others.
Mm. Oh, I love that. So one, I want to go back to the obsession thing because yeah, I'm the same. And I always say to people, like, hands up, like I am obsessed. I'm obsessed with my clients, I'm obsessed with my work, but I think we can have healthy obsession. So I think it depends on our perception. The same with being delusional. This is a whole other conversation I could talk about. But these words where we might have negative associations with them, and it's like, oh no, it's okay to be obsessed. Because I think when we're obsessed, we can be laser focused. And that's what you did. You've kind of shown that, like, okay, I had this obsession and passion go hand in hand. And I think then that was that laser focus to kind of keep you going down this route.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the thing that's dangerous, and maybe this is off on a bit of a tangent, but labels of labels like um obsessive, labels like hustle, labels like, we can think of loads, right? But these labels, they carry so many different meanings to different people, and it is about understanding what those words mean and what they actually look like. You know,
Yeah.
we know what an obsession or an addiction can be like in a very negative way. Um,
Yeah.
but actually to, achieve or strive for greatness, you kind of need to have that DNA.
Yeah. And see what that looks like to you in a healthy way. So for me, it's like that obsession is what gets me up in the morning and I'm really excited. I'm excited to start the day. So I don't get like Monday blues or anything. Like, is the thing that kind of beats that? Or is the other way where you're not feeling like it and you're like, but you know what, I'm still committed. So I might not be able to give my 100% today, but I can still give my 80%, and that's better than like not giving anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's knowing what that looks like for you. There was so much that I wanted to go back over that you were talking about, so that I can also relate with the wanting to like put this stuff out to more and more people as well, because I'm at that kind of tipping point where I've got small number of clients that I work with, and then it's like, oh, but I'm really conscious that I don't just want this work to only stay with the kind of the clients that I'm working with, the kind of I think I've got about 8 clients at the moment. It's like, how can you get this out to more players, like youth players, and getting this word out there? And so I could really relate to what you were saying. And I guess for you, has that been the biggest shift that you've seen then since you started out? Was, you've obviously spoken about it, that shift in social media, and then TikTok's come along, which still blows my mind, but I need to be on there more. Instagram, all of this stuff, like suddenly you're more accessible to people around the world. Do you think, has that been the kind of the biggest shift?
Yeah, big time. And I think that's an interesting point about being accessible. And I think I differentiate between the two. So
Mm.
yes, players or the audience are, we are more accessible to being able to connect with people who can provide us with entertainment, education, whatever it is, right? So
Mhm.
yes, we do have the tools to do that. But I kind of differentiate the word access, because even though they can tap into whatever I post, they don't necessarily have access to me. And this is where it's important for me to have different touch points. So
Mm.
from a business perspective, like I'm super happy to share stuff on social media, what I'm doing, what I've said, what I'm teaching, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, because it does offer entertainment, education, and various other things, right? So I'm okay to kind of just throw that out there, because while everybody's attention is on these platforms, I'd be silly not to, communicate in some way on those platforms. So
Yeah.
I'm conscious that building brand and connecting with people, that is the initial kind of spark that's going to get somebody intrigued about what I do and what we do as a business.
Mm.
But just because you follow me on social media doesn't mean you get access to me.
Yeah.
And that's where, from a business perspective, it's like, okay, well, here's kind of the surface level stuff. Here's what will give you a little bit of an insight. But now, if you actually want to engage, from a level that's really gonna like support your performance on a bespoke level, then again, there's different opportunities. So,
Yeah.
I do free camps and skills clinics. I do camps that you can pay for, but numbers are large. So, the quality of attention is a little bit more diluted just because of the sheer volume of people.
Yeah.
Small groups, we do private one-to-one, and the price point will obviously reflect all of those different kind of touch points.
Mm.
But I think that just makes, I guess, our services a lot more accessible, because we have those various levels of service.
Yeah, and that depending on the level that you're at, because it's always something I'm conscious of. My own mindset gremlin is I have like a weird like superhero complex, like you were saying about the superpowers. But I have this like, I want to help everyone, like one to one. I want to help everyone, forgetting that actually, you know what, I need to sleep and eat, and I got a family. So it's that of like, you can't help, like one to one, we can't help everyone, but having these different levels and being like, okay, depending on what level you're at and kind of budget or whatever it is, it's like there are different ways to get different bits of information. It's kind of the level of information you get, and accessibility, like you're saying, will vary. But it's also great that there is like, there are platforms where people can get some information for free and can kind of binge it.
Yeah.
It's absorbing that content and information that you've gained, knowledge you've gained over years and years, like decades, and
Yeah.
being able to put it out in kind of different ways.
Yeah, and then the times that we're at now is where it's so easy to make videos, it's so easy to edit pictures, it's so easy to kind of post and affordable, that,
Mhm.
as a consumer, you are sifting through a lot of stuff. It's an extremely saturated market with content. So it does take time, and you kind of got to find ways to be plugged into the people that make sense for you, and navigate that. I mean, that's choppy seas there, because you just don't know what you're going to come across and whether or not it's accurate, healthy, or whatever. Um, but I think that's where the challenge is for brands, personal brands, content creators, is to find ways to separate yourselves from the rest.
Yeah, it's so true. And something I wanted to touch upon with that is, the fact that kind of, yeah, you can be on the go all the time. And like you said, you can be on social media and kind of that like ever present type feeling. How do you take care of you? So obviously you're juggling lots of different things in person, but also online. How do you kind of, yeah, make sure that you're not getting burned out and overwhelmed, and particularly when you're giving so much to other people?
Well, I guess there's different phases to kind of this journey where you go through times of where you're doing a lot, you're on your feet a lot, you're coaching a lot, and you're working out what makes sense for you and what's the most efficient way. Because you can spread yourself so thinly
Mm.
that the quality across the board starts to drop because you're worried about the quantity.
Yeah.
And I think once you get to a point where you realize, like, well, okay, the volume of work is there, is available, the demand is there, but you can't supply that to everybody, right? Similar to what you just said, like we can't do one-to-one coaching with everybody, right?
Yeah.
We can't. So I think once you're able to realize that and get to a point where you can work more efficiently and just focus in on a smaller group of people, but really provide them with high quality a high quality service, sorry,
Mm.
then you start to kind of realize, okay, well, those quieter moments, what needs to be done in those quieter moments?
Mhm.
Does the admin load come up where you need to be, behind a laptop? Does that give you an opportunity to actually connect and meet with people, more socially on a slower pace? Does that provide you with the time to sleep more, eat better, rest better? So I think working efficiently then helps you find those moments for rest and recovery,
Mm.
quality time, me time,
Yeah.
spa days, self-care days, whatever it is.
Mhm.
You start to realize that actually you can make time. But then, I'm so ambitious and driven to scale and grow what we're doing, that, well, the workload just keeps getting, more and more and more. So the most significant thing that's transformed what we do right now is the fact that it has gone from I to a we, and I've built
Mm.
a team around the business that is now allowing um, all of these things to happen, but it's not being done by one person or two people, but
Yeah.
now collectively we're all helping this, you know, engine drive,
Mm.
and that's been one significant change,
Yeah.
significant change. Like, to give you real life people, for example. So I used to film and edit and do all of that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And I would even get my children to point the camera so that I would have something, and then I would go away and edit it. And I realized that that well, they don't want to do that. I mean, they had to because they're my kids, but they didn't necessarily want to do it.
Yeah.
And that's not their expertise. And then I would then, take all the raw footage, and I would take time to edit it, and I would, it would take hours at times, depending on what was being filmed and needed. And then that was taking me away from getting that rest or having another client or quality time with family. So
Mm.
a big kind of hire, if you like, was outsourcing the photographer, the videographer, who is able to produce that content. Huge. Hiring Ruche Walton, who, it really helps me out significantly with the business. Having her by my side, who I can chop up ideas with, who I can say, Ruche, can you handle this, please? And she's incredible. She just runs with it. That takes a lot of pressure off me doing those things, because now I can focus time on new business development, with connecting with more people. So again, the scale and growth kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Um,
And then you can focus on your zone of genius, like the thing that only you can do, and the stuff that really lights you up, you
for
know?
sure.
Yeah,
And
make
that's really important. I mean, when
Mhm.
I had the time and I was just coaching and just focusing on that, you could really kind of just double down and go deep into that
Mhm.
layer. But then as things start to build and you experience a little bit of success and growth, you start having to do other things.
Yeah,
I have an accountant. I mean,
yeah,
I have I don't have a clue about what's the best way to, to manage the finances and, to sort out my taxes.
yeah,
They do that,
yeah,
and steer me through it. And that's awesome. And you
yeah.
know,
And being able to delegate that stuff out and be like,
oh,
right, that's.
incredible,
And I
incredible.
think, that's so applicable to the athlete as well. So, even if we're not running businesses or growing our business, it's thinking about who's around you. Like, you're not going this alone. Like, who's in that support network? Like, who can you lean on when you need? And kind of, yeah, being aware of that.
Yeah,
So that you don't have to go through growth on your own, whatever that growth looks like, business or personal or anything, remembering who's around you.
definitely. If you've got people around you who are, experts, or certainly just know more about certain fields, uh,
Mm,
and are skilled, in that realm, then they add significant value to you as an athlete, as the business owner, whatever it is. It makes the most amount of sense to build a team around you. So going from, filming and editing my own footage, to responding to emails, to sending invoices, to having conversations with potential clients or existing clients, to, scheduling things, to, graphic design. We've got Anna Popovich, who does a phenomenal job with our digital assets, which, go out on social media. Sometimes they live on the website, sometimes they live in newsletters, blah blah blah, whatever it is. Like, just building this team of people um, allows you to just produce a higher level of output. And yes, it comes at a cost, but it's a cost well spent, because it helps with the growth.
yeah, I love it. So this is a very cheesy segue and wasn't my intention, but it worked really well. Was thinking about, the athlete and having the support network. It's like I can't even remember the words that you just used, but they're kind of leveraging like other people's expertise, that kind of thing. It's like this is why you need like working with a skills trainer or a mental performance coach, like having that, that kind of support network of people where it is their expertise. And yeah, you've got to do the work, just like in your business, like you're still doing the work in your zone of genius, but letting other people come in and put their zone of genius in too. That's what's going to, yeah, help you kind of propel you forward. So just as
Yeah.
you were talking, I'm like, oh, there is a link in terms of, yeah, the experts that you bring in as an athlete. So I can't remember how you said it, but you're saying about the output, kind of, yeah, improving that output or having that kind of, yeah, your peak.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
really
the
awesome.
thing is that, I mean, look, we can name experts in all these different realms, right?
Yeah.
Departments, if you like. And if we think of experts who've done it for a while, professionals in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
we not everybody can just have a team of people like that, right? Like, it comes at a cost.
Yeah.
It's the reality, right?
Yeah.
It comes at a cost. But there's a way to be resourceful at certain stages in your career where you can tap into it,
Yeah.
at some level. And I think that's really important. And I think a lot of athletes don't know, or feel insecure, or there's definitely friction there, where
Yeah.
athletes do struggle to invest in themselves, you know,
Mm.
but you can't escape it. Like, if you want to get strong, physically strong,
Mm-hmm.
then you could do it at home, but you're going to be limited on the resistance. So
Yeah.
either you buy your own equipment, or you go to a gym,
Yeah.
right? There's a level of investment there, which is the norm. It's the norm to pay for a gym, right?
Yeah.
It's the norm to pay for a monthly subscription to a gym. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's the norm to have a phone so that you can email and access other people, right? And connect with people. These are all societal norms. But the thing that isn't necessarily normal for everybody is to have the personal trainer, to have the skills coach, to have the mental coach, to have the nutritionist, to have the physio, to have the yoga instructor. You may have somebody who could do multiple things. You may be able to connect with somebody who is starting off in their journey, who you can all build together. You know, there may be an exchange of services that can be offered. There's resourceful ways that you can tap into some expertise without having to think about, well, I can't afford it, and that's it.
Yeah, opening up, kind of having that conversation is really important. So I want to wrap up with a question that is I ask every single client, and we set our intentions kind of every week around this. Just very simple. If you could describe like one word to say kind of how you want to feel as you go through the summer, what would that feeling word be?
Feeling word.
How you want to feel going through the summer?
Yeah. The word that sticks out is patience. Patience. And if I was to describe that feeling of patience, then I suppose the feeling would be to control your heart rate. That's probably, yeah, that's probably the kind of the word or the description that would go with it. Because the summer it's not long, but it's long. It's long enough. It's long enough to get stuff done. It's long enough to get in shape. It's long enough to change your shooting form. It's long enough to lock in on some things that are really holding you back. It's long enough to get better at stuff. But if you don't capitalize on it, then the summer goes like that.
Yeah. So it's then, yeah, having, and I guess for you, it's also the having the patience that it's not going to happen overnight. So like you've got to, yeah, kind of be putting in that consistent work as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, if I'm working with a player and we're talking about hand positioning on the ball for, for their jump shot, and I make a correction, like we've got to have the patience to realize that, okay, just because you've moved your hand now doesn't mean that ball's going to go in 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many other variables. There's even just the simple fact that it's new, right? So doing anything new takes time to really kind of like, get better at it, We don't just hop on a bike and all of a sudden we can ride it.
Yeah. And for it to become natural and try it in different situations. And that's, yeah, where the patience comes. And that, I mean, that's a great word to choose because it's good for the mindset as well. Having that patience, which it can be really difficult because we can get really impatient. So I like it. So holding on to a patience word. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been like, yeah, an amazing conversation. I think we've touched on so many different areas, but I think there's a lot that people can relate to as well and kind of take some stuff away too.
Definitely. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being on. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of NBA Mental Boost, the secret weapon to supercharging your performance on the court. If you found today's episode useful, don't forget to subscribe and share. You can connect with me over on any social platform. You can find me at Dr Rosie Mead. Until next time, go out there and dominate using the power of your mind. This is Dr Rosie, signing off.